B'shus the Rav, we had the schus of having a yeshiva. The Rav came to learn by us. How long was it? A year, maybe?
Yeah, something.
The geschmack that he brought to the base medrash also left a rosham on all of us. And even though I'm not the bar hochi to come and be doirish fnei the choshev tzibur, but I had no choice. Ein misarvin legadol. I had no choice but to acknowledge his request. Just a few ha'aros maybe on Perek Na'ara. Perek that's from the Geshmaka difficult prokim in Mesechtes Nedarim and in all of Shas. Just we'll touch on what we can touch on. The Mishnah first teaches us the halacha Na'ara v'yu ba'ila mafir nedorel. The Hainu, although Ktana, who's B'shus Aviyah, Naira is B'shus Aviyah, the Av is made for her Nedarim alone. What happens by Naira Murasa, that the halacha is Aviyu Baila Mefir Nedoreh B'shotfis? What happens if, let's say, we're dealing with Nedarim that are not Nidrei Inei Nefesh and Nedarim Shebeino Lebeino? So again, according to most Rishonim, nobody can be made for those Nedarim. It's not relevant to Shaila. But the Shaila stellt sich al Shitas HaRambam that the Av does have the koyach to be made for all Nedarim. So here, when you have a shutfus of the Av and the Orus, do we say now that because the Av is able to be made for all Nedarim, now the Orus can also be made for B'shutfis Av? Hagan that a Orus is certainly not made for Shar Nedarim normally, but maybe with the Shutfis of the Av he could be made for. The Meiri brings two days. He brings Shitas HaRambam, and he says to him it's Pashat that even the Shitas HaRambam that the Orus is that the Av is able to be made for Shar Nedarim, but since Nar Marasa they're made for B'shutfis, and when you're talking about a shotfis, you need them both to be made for. And the orus is not made for Shar Nedarim. So avada, they can't be made for. That's what the Miri says for a davar pashat. However, he brings yesh oimrim that a chaylik that vibalt the av can be made for. Memela b'shotfis nar marasa aviu baila mefirin af Shar Nedarim. And the shaila is, why is that? L'chayra, the Miri is the pashtas that even though the Av can be made for Shar Nedarim, but Lamaisa you need the Shutfis of the Orus, and the Orus is not made for Shar Nedarim. Why does the Yesh Mefarshim hold that b'mokim that it's a Shutfis, then we say all of a sudden the Shutfis, the Orus, has a Koyach Hafara on Nedarim that he wouldn't be able to be made for by himself? So, l'chayra we could have stellt avek the Yesoid HaMachloikis between the Miri and the Yesh Mefarshim in the following manner. Again, we started saying that Avada Nar Marasa be'etzem is B'shus Aviyah. Legabi other halachas chutz from Nedarim, she's B'shus Aviyah. So now that we say that there's a shutfis between the Av and the Orus, Yesh Loden Begeder oisoi shutfis. Is it the pshat that the Orus got his own koyach now? The Torah put the daughter Bershus, the Orus, also legabi Nedarim, even though legabi Sharon Yonim she's completely Bershus Av, but legabi Nedarim she's mechza Bershus Av and mechza Bershus Abal. Dilma, no. Since really she's Bershus Av, so the Geder of Nair Marasa Aviyu Baila Mafir Nedareh is not the pshat. We gave the Orus a koyach. Rather, we gave the Orus part of the Rishus of the Av. He doesn't have his own koyach. His koyach comes from the Av. And since the Av has the achoilis to be made for all Nedarim, even Nedarim she'enam in Nidrei Inei Nefesh and enam dvarim shebeino lebeino, when the Orus controls that koyach hafara, he's also able to be made for. That's, I think, how we could have explained the machloikis. However, it's not so simple. We started already Perek Namurasa. We already saw that the Gemara says in the first daf of Namurasa that legabe koidmin, there's a halacha that ain't a baal mefer b'koidmin. A baal is not able to be made for nedarim that were made before they got married. Any neder that was made before they got married, the baal cannot be made for. However, b'shutfis of the orus,
shutfis of the av,
with shutfis of the shutfis of the av and the orus, then he could be made for b'koidmin. Like the Gemara says, "Ein a baal made for b'koidmin, minei orus made for b'koidmin." Elulav mishum shutfus the av. The Gemara on the bottom of Samach Zayin Amud Beis is mefurish that mikoyach the shutfis of the av, you are able to be made for b'koidmin, even though kishala atzma you were not able to be made for b'koidmin. So we already see this is kimat the din of the yesh meforshim. We already see that the gedder of the shutfis is not the pshat that the orus ki'ilu has his own koyach. If he got his own koyach, then he would not be able to be made for b'koidmin. Al korchoch kiloshin ritva, that the orus is not a snifin la'av, he's just taking over the koyach of the av, and memela, since the av is made for b'koidmin, so the orus is also made for b'shutfusei b'koidmin. And this din is not a machloikas, everyone agrees to this din. There's a Gemara Mefureshes that b'mokim that you have naira murasa legabi koidmin machmas shutfusei the av, the halacha is that you could be made for. So, fakert, we were trying to figure out what is pshat in the yesh meforshim legabe the halacha of shar nedorim she'enam shel inu nefesh ve'enam shebeino lebeino, that only the av, according to the Rambam, could be made for those nedorim. The orus cannot be made for shar nedorim. That everyone agrees the orus can't be made for shar nedorim. Zog in the yesh meforshim machmas shutfusei the av. Now you could be made for shar nedorim. The Rebbe says no. You need both of them, and the orus can't be made for. Some mela they can't be made for. Chayru, why is it different than koidmin? In koidmin we see clear that the yesh meforshim is right. That the gedder of the shutfis is that the orus is mekabel from the av. And since legabi the av, there's no problem of koidmin, there's no problem legabi the orus. Legabi shar nedarim, it is a problem. Something that's
neither completely. In yen and nedarim, he can't have shutfis. He has shutfis where he has koyach, but he doesn't have.
So l'chorah daf bezogin that avada, this nekuda is correct, and nobody argues on this. The gedder of naira murasa aviu ba'ila mefir nedorea is that the orus got his schos from the av. that does state in the fact that you can be made for b'koidmin, and klapei the av, there's no such thing as koidmin. You can't be mader before the av, before you came into rishus av. That was when you were born rishus av. Like the av, it's not koidmin. So any time the orus is coming to take over miktsas of the rishus of the av, avada, by him it's not shayach koidmin, because he got the koyach from the av, and by him it's not koidmin. However, legabe the halacha of shar nedorim she'enum shel inu nefesh ve'enum shebeino lebeino, here we have a machloikis, because I think the yesod of the machloikis is not whether he got his koyach from the av. Avada got his koyach from the av. The shaila is how do we view the koyach that he got from the av? Do we view that as exactly how it was Eitzel Ha'av? It exists, Eitzel Ha'orus, and since it's almost like a power of attorney on your koyach hafara. You, the avev koyach hafara, we allowed you, the orus, to deal with the av's koyach hafara, and the av's koyach hafara relates to shar nedarim also. So then the orus would also be able to be made for shar nedarim. That's what the yesh meforshim held. However, the meiri, who's cholik, hagam that he's maskin to the etzim yisoid that I'm taking the koyach from the orus, and memela legabe koidmin, there's no problem of koidmin. I'm taking the koyach from the av. Memela's no problem of koidmin, because by the av it's not koidmin. But when I get a koyach from the av, we don't view it as I'm using the koyach as it was by him. Now it's my eigen koyach that I got from the av. And the halacha is an orus is not able to be made for these nedarim. An orus is not able to be made for shar nedarim. Since the orus is not able to be made for shar nedarim, Halta Meiri that Lamaisas here the Shutfis is not going to work, even though Legabi Koidmin it did work. Because Legabi Koidmin, I'm certainly taking from the Av his Koyach. And Legabi the Av there was no problem of Koidmin. Memela Avadai could be Mefer. But Legabi Shar Nedorim, when that power that I took from the Av is going to translate into my own power, which Nedorim could I be Mefer? Whatever Nedorim were able to be Mufar Legabi the father, because it wasn't Koidmin Legabi the father, I now have jurisdiction on those Nedorim as well. However, if these Nedorim I don't have a koyach to be Mefer on, if they were made by me also, if they were made Tachtov also, then Avad I can't be made for them. So Shar Nedorim, that even if she made while she was married to me, I couldn't be Mefer, I wouldn't be able to be Mefer. That's l'chayru what we have to say for the Yesh Mefarshim. V'ayin, obviously, Mishkan like the Svara. I saw one interesting Haisafa on this, which maybe adds another dimension that's relevant to the rest of Perek Namurasa. The Torah brings B'Shem Rabbeinu Yechiel, who also holds like the Rambam, that an Av is able to be made for all Nedarim. And he holds like the Meiri, that B'Shutfis HaOrus, since the Orus is not made for Shar Nedarim, they cannot be made for. Abizok Rabbeinu Yechiel, Nishnor them, but even if the Orus is going to die, and the halacha is that where the Orus dies, Nisroikna, the Rishus of the Orus, back to the Av, that idea itself, that when we say the Orus dies, Nisroikna back to the Av, that itself already suggests that the whole koyach of the Orus may have come from the Av. But Zok Rabbeinu Yechiel, now the Av cannot be Mefer by himself. Zavada Dvar Pella. The Av by himself is able to be made for all Nedarim. Bein Nedarim shel Bein Oil Lebeino, Bein Nedarim shel She'ena Bein Oil Lebeino. Comes to a Shutfis of the Orus, now all of a sudden we say, since you need the Orus, and the Orus is not made for Shar Nedarim, you can't be made for. But now that the Orus is going to die and it's striking the back to the Av, now the Av can't be Mefer. It sounds very modern. Read the Lashon inside. Rabbi Yechiel Chiluk. Koidem shetisaris Mefer kol nedorah, like the Rambam. Avon nisarso umeis habal v'chazor l'shusai. Oz einay Mefer el nidrei nefesh. How is that even possible? How did she get worse than when she started? There's a lot of different ways to go here, but we'll try the most likely way. Perhaps the shaila over here is, how does Nisroikna work? Kinir, it's a machlokes between the Ramban, the Rashba, and the Ritva, Behemshech, whether Nisroikna is just vacating the rishus that was given over to the Orus. The Orus had a rishus in the Nedarim that L'chari got from the Av. When he dies, so it just goes back to the way it was. Imkain L'chari Divrei Rabbeinu Yechiel have no movement. But the Rashba's mavur that's not the pshat. The pshat in Nisroikne is that now the Av is able to be shoylet on the koyach that the Orus took from him. It's not the pshat that things go back to the way they were. Al Yedei Nisroikne, we say the father is now able to control the Orus Dikechelik. Oy bazoi, then we could start to think that perhaps Rabbeinu Yechiel is saying that once it goes back, but still klapei dvarim shebeino lebeino and nidrei klapei shar nedarim that are not beino lebeino and inu nefesh, since when it was by the Orus he was not able to be mefer, if the Av is now going to come back and use the chelik Orus, then Ivaita can't be made for those nedarim. Avada, if you understand like the Pashtus, that once the Orus dies, his rishus goes back to the Av, there's no reason why he can't be made for Shar Nedarim like he always was. But if we say that somehow the koyach of the Av is only al yedei that he's shoylet through the rishus of the Orus, since the Orus was not made for those Nedarim, the Av may not be able to be made for them either. That's one discussion I wanted to just discuss with the Olam about the Geder of the Shutfis between the Av and the Oros.
Nisgarsha is the same thing?
Sorry?
Nisgarsha is the same thing?
Nisgarsha, is there Nisroikna by Nisgarsha? I believe that there is.
The same.
I believe it's the same, yeah.
It's gespart. If you hold that the Horus, that this Nisroikna, the Baal, the Av gets a koyach over the Baal, then it has to be like the Meiri. Because if there's a Rishus of the Baal, so then how would there ever be a mokum to do a Dvarm Shabena that
Maybe
are not
totally
Dvarm Shabena
how you explain the machlokes of the Miri and the Yesh Mepharshim.
Yeah, it's gespart that way.
Yeah. Just one more topic I wanted to touch on is the inyan of Hakama. We find that there are two ways for both the Baal and the Av to be Mekayim Nedorim. You could be Mekayim Nedorim by being Shoisik Meis Leis, Ki Hechushlo, B'yom Shamoy. The Psukim are mefurish that any time you're Shoisik Meis Leis, then you can't be made for anymore. And then there's also saying Kayim L'chi. If you say Kayim L'chi, even before the end of the 24-hour period, the neder is already Mekuyim. Now, Yesh Lodin in Hakama in general. Is Hakama a thing? Did something happen to my neder when I'm Mekayim the neder? Or is Hakama just losing the schus to be mefer? Nothing positive happened to the neder. You just lost the koyach hafara. The Shulchan Aruch in Reish Lamed Daled teaches us a very interesting halacha. The Ramah brings it from the Marik. It seems that it was not pashut this way, but the Ramah brings from the Marik fascinating din. We know you could be shoyal on a neder. The whole Masechtas Nedarim we've been learning, Charata, Pesach, however She'ela works, but the fact is that you could be shoyal on a neder. Can you be shoyal on a neder that has hakama on it? Can you be shoyal on a neder that has hakama on it? Again, this is not the Gemara Shaila Behemshech whether nisholin alahekim. That's whether you could be shoyal on your hakama. This Shaila is, can you be shoyal on a neder that your father or your husband was Mekayim? So the Marik says as follows. Yesh oimrim de in chacham oigil ad yoitis yechoylin lahater achar hakama shel bal. There's yesh oimrim that says that you cannot do she'ela after there was hakama. Avol im loy hefel bal vehechrish lo, then yochol chacham oigil ad yoitis lahater. He's mechalik. The Marik is mechalik. What kind of hakama was done here? If it was just shtika meis leis, then you could still be shoyal on the neder. If it wasn't shtika meis leis, if he actually said kayim l'chi, then you cannot be shoyal on the neder. So kipshutoi is mavur that these two sugei hakama are actually different. That being shoysik meis leis is not really hakama. The Torah gave the Av and the Baal a 24-hour period to be mefer. Once that 24-hour period expires, so memela you have no schus to be mefer. Not that it blibes a hakama, you just lost your koyach hafara. Masha'en came. If you say kayim l'chi is not just being mevater on my schus hafara. Kayim l'chi is actually adding something to the neder. Gamani mitzaref lahanal, and that addition makes it that I can't be shoyal on the neder anymore. That's l'chayr kipshutiv v'shteit in the Marik. There's two kinds of hakama. There's hakama of shtika, which is just ibud haschus hafara. Ibud schus hafara, fine. So I was ma'abed schus hafara, but there's no reason why it's different than any other neder. Masha'en came after I'm actually mekayim the neder with kayim l'chi. Something was added to the neder that now I can't even be shoyal on the neder anymore. Until I get rid of the hakama, Like the Shulchan Aruch Firzois, Toiv Lahachmir, that I should really be shoyl on my Akama before I'm shoyl on the Neder. Lefizeh, L'chayra, we have a Yishuv on the Rashash's Kasha right here in the beginning of Perek Na'amarasa. The Mishnah says, Na'amarasa aviu bailam afirin dorel, hafar ha'av v'loy hafar ha'bal. Hafar ha'bal v'loy hafar ha'av, einay mufa. Ve'ein tzorach loy mar shekiyam echad man. Ein tzorach loy mar shekiyam echad man. Gemara is going to ask, yeah, obviously. But the Gemara, the Mishnah said, hafar ha'av v'loy hafar ha'bal, hafar ha'bal v'loy hafar. What did the other guy do? I'm Mefer and you weren't. What did you do? Kipshutoi, you did nothing. You weren't Mefer and you weren't Mekayim. But the Mefarish, Rashi over here says, V'loi hefer abal el shosak meis leis. He was Mekayim. The Rosh is also meduyik that way. That it's not the pshat that the other guy was shoysik. And now we're discussing what's the status of the neder before the Meis Leis period. No, we're talking about where he was already Shoisik Meis Leis. I was Mefer and you were Shoisik Meis Leis. Frakta Rishash, that's the Sefer of the Mishnah. The Sefer of the Mishnah says, Ve'in tzorach loy mashakiyam echad man. It's mamish the same din now. If you're telling me we're Shoisik Meis Leis, so that's Akama. If it's Akama, so then that's the Sefer. L'chayra lefi v'shteit marik, that there's two different levels of Akama. There's Akama of Kayim L'chi, which is actually a sofa on the neder, and then there's Shtika, which just being ma'abid the schus to be mefer, but it's not actually Akama. And we grad to have a very nice nafkamina, whether it could be shoyl on the neder. Okay, so maybe that's what the Mefarish and the Rosh are saying, that he was shoysik meis leis. That's the Sefer? No, the Sefer is Akama mamish. Ain't so chlam shekiyam echad mem. Here we're talking about shtika meis leis. Mamaisa, even if that's true, we still have to know what in the world pushed these Rishonim to explain Hafar ha'av v'loy hafar ha'bal el shosik meis leis. Why in the world would they say that it means shosik meis leis? The Rashash says linir avada doesn't mean shosik meis leis. Why would we want to confuse everybody, into thinking that maybe there's Akama here and ask a kasha from the Sefer? Just say he was shosik and it wasn't meis leis yet. What was
That's not lo hefer. That's not. Lo hefer means...
Lo hefer means lo hefer.
Oh, so they learn that.
Forever?
They learn that has to be a positive lo hefer. The only way to have positive lo hefer is shtika.
Ken Zayn. I saw in the Avnei Nezer that he wants to say a Gavaldige Chiddush. Be'emes, he's medayik from the Lashon HaMishnah, Hafar ha'av v'loy hafar ha'bal, hafar ha'bal v'loy hafar ha'av, einoi mufer. Sokt Avnei Nezer, einoi mufer is mashma, einoi mufer klal uklal. Frakt Avnei Nezer is not true. There's a shaila the Gemara lekamon, whether we say Baal is Megas Gayaz or Miklash Kolish. What's the shaila of whether Baal Megas Gayaz or Miklash Kolish? The shaila is, how do we view Shver Gemara, that it had to be either one? It could have been neither. But the Gemara seems to assume for a Dover Poshet that since Nair Marasa Aviu Bailam Afir and Dereh, each one by himself does accomplish something. Either to be Megas Gayas in the Kamas of the Neder, or to be Miklash Kolish in the Eiches of the Neder. If I'm Madir from two Kezesim, and you hold Megas Gayas, so each one knocks off the Neder on half. And if you hold Miklash Kolish, knocks off in the Choymer of the Isser of the Neder. I'm not going to get Malchus. From the strange Gemaras, who told you that it does either one? Until you do both, nothing happened. Gemara's Mavur for a Dover Poshet never tells us where its Mokher is, it's Poshet, that each one is able to accomplish half on his own. Half in Eichos or half in Kamas. So frekt Avnei Nezer, Pelle. Hafra avaloi, hafra abal, hafra avaloi. Einay muffer. It's not einay muffer. It should be muffer b'miktas. Zogt Avnei Nezer, that was the hechruch. I'm not sure if the Avnei Nezer actually says this, or I'm saying it al pi the Avnei Nezer's kash. I'm not. If he says it and it's good, it's bishmoy. If he says it and it's no good, it's bishmi. But al koponim, I think the Avnei Nezer says this himself. That's why these Rishonim, the Mefarish and the Rosh, they learned that Hofer v'loy Hofer must be with Hakama. Hofer v'loy Hofer must be with Hakama. Because if it wasn't with Hakama, it would be Megas Guys, or it would be Miklash Kolish. Why is it Einay Muffer? B'chlal? It's only Einay Muffer must be because there's Hakama here. Because it was Shoisik Meis Leis. So L'chayra, if that's correct, and that was the Hechruch of these Rishonim, I think what we were saying before to answer the Rishash's kasha may not be maspik. And the Rishash asks that these Rishonim say that I was shoisik meis leis. If I was shoisik meis leis in the Reisha, and that's Hakama, so then what's the Seifa where he said Kaim L'chi? We're already talking about Hakama. So we answer, there's two kinds of Hakama, the Bavur and the Marik. There's Hakama that's just the Ibut Schos Hafara, that's Shtika. And that's obviously how these Rishonim are going. A Shoisik Meis Leis is not a comma, it's just Ibut Schos Hafara. Mashaykin in the Sefer story where I did a comma. L'chayra im timtza loymar. That the reason why the Reisha and the Sefer, Hagam that the Reisha is talking about are Shoisik Meis Leis. Why is that not a comma? Because being Shoisik Meis Leis is just an Ibut Schos Hafara. Mashaykin in the Sefer I said Kaim L'chi, that's a comma mamish. So if all I have in the ratio where I was Shoisik Meis Leis is Ibut Schos Hafara, why is that not Megas Gayas? How did Avnei Nezer answer his kasha? L'chayra, why is that not Megas Gayas? All that happened is that he lost his Schos Hafara. I should still be a Bishlam if you tell me it's Hakama Mamish with Hakama, so then there's no more Megas Gayas. But Chmein, the Pshat is Pashat. The din of Megas Gayas or Miklash Kolish is only where your hafara is going to be mitzurif to the other hafara. Then we say, how did these two hafaras work together to remove the neder? With the gather of Megas Guys, with the gather of Miklash Kolish. But Lu Yitzur, you can't be Mefer, then l'chayr it's Poshet, that Avada, there is no Megas Guys and there is no Miklash Kolish, there's neither. The whole idea of Megas Gayas and Miklash Kolish is when they're going to be Mitzurif, how did they work to remove the neder? But Lu Yitzur, we're talking about where he was Shoisik Meis Leis, Afilu and Timtzon, it's not Akama. His vart was never because it's Akama. His vart is if you're not going to wind up being Mefer, there's going to be a lost opportunity of Afara Mitzad Da'av. Half is never going to remove anything. This that we say, that Baal Megas Gayas and Miklash Kolish is where they both wind up being Mefer, but Lamaisa, you ate one of the Kazaisim before. Obviously we have to learn the Sugyos to see if this is Oisgehalten, because you can't be Shoyal or Mefer and Neder, possibly that's not, the Chayfet's not here anymore, so if they ate the whole thing, it might not be Negeh. But Akoponim, I think this might be an idea to answer the Shaila on the Rishash. Just one last Oisfir. L'chayra in Ran is mavur kama pa'amim, not like the Marik. Again, we said that the Marik, just a general question I think that we could all...
How does it come back? When the guy is in the middle of the day, and then it's gone, and my part is gone, the other part is gone. And then at the end of the day it comes back.
As soon as it's not roy to be mitzurif, and we know that there's not going to be hafara, so then your hafara is not part of a whole hafara. The way that Megas Guys work.
He's saying what happens if he ate the one. He's saying
what happens if he eats it in between. This is the big show. What happens if he eats the one and then we don't know what.
No, and then at the end the other person is not Mefer for the Yom Shoma.
So then it wasn't Maklish or Megas.
So the Mafrei was Chayiv.
It can't be Megas or Miklish. Well, Good geschmack. When we learn the Sugyos Daf Yomi, we'll see if this is true or not. But I'm suggesting that there is no such thing as megas or miklish if there's going to be at the end no hafara. If we know that one of them is not able to be mefer, then none of it is removed. There's no such thing as hafara of one of them removing half. It's hafara of one where it's mitzvah to the other one. It's the pair. Okay, we'll have to see.
Doesn't the striking give him the ability that there's no need for the rest of the hafara?
If he dies, then avada. No, but it's not pasha where it's destroyed. You don't have to be made for the whole thing again. If you were made for already,
I'm afraid that first ma'aseh hafara works alone. Saying even in such a case
where it's destroyed, no, but pasha where he dies is hafara's bottle. That's what the Gemara says right away. Where you die, your original hafara's bottle. You have to start again. The destroyed works that now the av can be made for the whole thing by himself.
You're asking, so it's Roy because in case he dies.
In case he dies.
In case he dies, he's asking that it would be Roy.
Just one final haysofa. The Chayrin Ran is mavur not like this raid that we're suggesting that there may be two dinim of hakama. There's hakama of shtika, which just makes you lose the koyach hafara, and then there's kayim lechi, which is hakama mamish. Nafkamina, we saw in the Marik whether you can be shoyal on the neder. You can't be shoyal where there's hakama, zok the Marik. On the neder, not you could be shoyal on hekim, but you can't be shoyal on a neder that has hakama.
Even after Yom Shama, you'd be able to be shoyal if it was mukam al yedei.
Okay.
That's what you're saying.
Noch nicht. 1 second. The Ran says as follows. The Ran on Daf Ayin Tes is trying to learn out how do we know that Hafara Belev does not work, but Hakama Belev does work. Halach is that Hakama Belev works. Hafara Belev does work, but Hakama Belev does work. Zok the Ran, where is the mocker? The mocker is from Hakama Shtika. That if I'm shoysik meisleis, it's Hakama. Zetmin that Hakama Belev also works.
You don't need a Maisa Hakama.
HaRav state that the Ran is yet telling them two. If we're going to say that the two different dinim, l'chayra the two shtel is weak.
Why? Maybe Hakama Belev would have that being able to be mefer. Maybe the Ran only wants that Hakama Belev will be as good as a shtika.
That I lose my schus hafara.
Yeah.
Belev. It doesn't sound that way. He has to say that a magbil nailed the din of it's not a full mocker. But I think we have a much bigger raya from one of the first runs in Na'ara. The Gemara has a tzad on Samar Zayin Amud Beis that big machlokes Rishonim had to learn this Gemara. But the way the Ran learns the Gemara had a tzad that av is l'chudei mefer, and the orus is not mefer l'chudei only b'shutfusei da'av. Again, the av can be mefer by himself, and the orus needs the av. Zok the Ran, okay, so the orus is completely irrelevant here.
Because you always need the av.
You always need the av monofshach. The orus is not relevant. Zok the Ran, what the Torah is telling you that the orus has a koyach, is he has a koyach to be mekayim. So obviously this Ran is Marav Sanigri, but meaning you have a koyach to be mekayim when you don't have a koyach to be mefer. So avada, the first step has to be that it's pasha that you do have the ability to be mefer. We're not saying the orus. There's no such thing as having a koyach hakama. Hakama means I approve of the neder. If you can't be mefer, you can't approve of the neder. We don't care about your opinion. Avada, the Ran is not saying that the orus does not have a koyach hafara. Just this koyach of hafara is irrelevant because anyways I need the av, and the av could do it all by himself. You'll ask me, what's the nafkamino with my irrelevant hafara? The nafkamino is whether I could be mekayim. That itself is not so bad. But the Ran legs tzu, Ema av l'chudei mefer. Nearly the av l'chudei leifu the koshle. The kivim the leyotzam rishus av k'the kasiv nele'el. The motzi mefer. We would think that the av could do it himself. Aval orus loy. So what are we being marbis mechusay devim hayasi leish? Hainu loymar the orus boy av the orus the kos rachmon loymar shem hekim hukam. And then he says va'afa gav d'chsiv alei dim hayasi leish ve'im b'yoyim shmoya isha yoni oisav ofers nidra lav lemeimra dafarosay toil klal elo shem loy hafar b'yoyim shamoy nimtza shehekim. The Ran is saying that not only Does the Orus, whose koyach hafara is kimat not relevant because you always need the Av, not only could he be Mekayim, but he could be Mekayim b'shtika. He could be Mekayim b'shtika. If he is shoisik meis leis, it's going to be akama, and the Av cannot be mefer. Now, being Mekayim b'shtika is l'chayra almost an impossibility. Mekayim b'shtika is because I wasn't mefer. There was there's no reason why I should have been mefer. My afar doesn't do anything. How does that show anything? Avad the Ran is a chiddush otzam that could be called akama. But what we're trying to bring out from the Ran again is that we see a Ran who's telling us that you could have hakamas shtika even where you don't have a koyach to be mefer. Your whole koyach is only to be mekayim. Your afar is not relevant, and still with your shtika you could be mekayim. If Titzaloymar that all it is an ibud schus afara, who cares that you were ma'abed your schus afara when you were shoysik? Your afara is anyways not relevant.
It's relevant that it's not a kiyum. That's a relevant thing also.
So I'm
if
saying,
there is no kiyum.
But if all kiyum of shtika is that you lost the koyach to be mefer, your afar, you didn't lose anything. You don't have the koyach to be mefer. What is your afar going to do? Your afar is nothing. We need the av either way. You do nothing. Teretz is Zochtaran, but you could be mekayim. So if you tell me I could say kayim l'chi, fine. But to say that I'm going to have akama with shtika, if all shtika is ibud schus afara, if all shtika is ibud schus afara l'chayr, that's completely not relevant because I never had anything added by my hafara.
But maybe the Surah says that because that's the limitation that he has, he even has a bigger kayach. You can argue that the father doesn't have it by Kim, only the Baal. The character, because I'm saying that usually you wouldn't say that his ishtik is a ma'isa, but the fact is that his whole kayach is only that. Is that? But his
so now he got more kayach with the shtika.
Yeah, because it was one. He has one thing that he could do.
I hear.
It's not that we feel bad. The shot is that. That's all he has.
But the whole koyach hafar is nicht to make him sein.
Yeah.
But here again, if we never found a musik in our lives, we never found a musik of shtika being hakama. All shtika is that I lost my koyach hafara. We're going to be mechadish now in this shlav of the Gemara that the shtika of the Baal is even better.
Yeah, because how does it work anyway? What's the sword that works with Baal?
Okay, I hear.
How is a machshava worked on an e-ma'isa to begin with? So why is it better by Chal? I'm saying this verse says both ways.
Just to be messiahim with one final ha'ara, which is that when we're going to get to the sugya of nisholin ala hekim, the Gemara says a shaila whether you could be shoyal on hakama. The Gemara is mefurish according to the Ran that the only shaila whether you could be shoyal on hakama is only whether you could be shoyal on kaim l'chim. But certainly you cannot be shoyal on this that you were shoysik meis leis. So bishloima, according to the Marik and what we were speaking until now, that the yisoid of the chilik between shtika and kayim l'chi is that there are two different kinds of hakamas. One is actual hakama, positive, and one is ibud schus hafara. So we understand you can't be shoyal on the ibud schus hafara, but maybe you could be shoyal on the positive. But l'chayr l'shita saran, that also the shtika is like the Ran says in Ayin Tes. It's we see from the fact it's like Anan Sahadi from the fact that he was shoysik that it's nichalei b'kiyumo shel neder. Why should I not be able to be shoyal that also? That's avada goyset tzorchim. The Rav said that after we're done we speak 5 minutes chumash.
Yes,
5 minutes chumash. Okay, keep it short. Just one quick thought to wrap up Sefer Bereshis. Nechleku harishonim. If Yaakov Avinu ever found out that the brothers sold Yosef, did Yaakov Avinu ever find out that the brothers sold Yosef? So we have Ramban in Vayigash, Vayidabru Elov is called Divrei Yosef. Asher Dibra Aleyev, they told to Yaakov, Kol Divrei Yosef, Yeroli al derech hapshat shelo yehugad li Yaakov kol yomov ki ochiv mochros Yosef, aval chishev ki hayatoye besadev amoitzu moise lakchu Umachrois el Mitzrayim ki achuv lo rotzu lahagid chatosam af kiyur lenafshem penitza v'yekalam. V'ilu yoda Yaakov bin Yazer ha'yuroi lehem she'choylu pnei aviyim b'moisel etzaves es Yosef mipiv. Right, we find, at least Rashi says mefurish, that the brothers made up a story that our father was mitzaveh, that you shouldn't hold it against us, what we did to you. It was a made-up story, Zok Rashi. It was never such a tzivui. Zok the Ramban, if it was true that Yaakov found out, why would the Shvatim not have asked Yaakov to try and intercede and protect them from the wrath of Yosef? Elamai, Zok the Ramban, Avada, it's Mavur, that Yaakov never ever found out about Mechiras Yosef. Chain Mavur also in Daskenim says that the reason why it says when Yaakov is choyle and they had to call Yosef, it sounds like they're calling him from far away. He didn't live near his father who was separated all these years. You'd think he would keep him in the palace. So after Daskenim, the reason why he kept his father at arm's length is because he was terrified that his father was going to ask him what happened. Memela, he stayed far away from his father, never was myrich in conversations with him. It would come, l'dei gilui, that the brothers had sold him and he would be makal them. Rashi starts earlier in the Parshiyos and he says, Malamit shechoshdom b'mechiras Yosef. At the end, ki ba'apam hargu ish v'tzonim ikru shar, Rashi's mavur that Yaakov did know, he's makal them on Mechiras Yosef, Shimon and Levi, Pashtus, he was chosheh them all the years that Yosef was missing. As soon as Yosef turns up and he realizes Tarf Yosef is a Baba Maisa, then he knew that they lied to him. That's l'chayra what changes. You look at Rashi, before Yosef turns up, it's choshdom. After Yosef turns up, then he knew that it was a lie. Machlokes Rishonim whether Yaakov ever found out or not. But one thing is clear, l'kulei alma, Yosef never ever told Yaakov what happened. No one's arguing about that. The shaila is, did Yaakov figure it out? But Yosef never ever told Yaakov what happened to him. We start in the beginning of the stories, in the youth of the Shvatim, Vayove Yosef es tibosim lo l'aviyah. Yosef can't stop criticizing his brothers. And he's constantly bringing everything that he sees might be a little bit wrong, he brings it to Yaakov to complain. But at the end, they sold him, and Yosef doesn't say a word. Shkoyach.